Claffey and Colin Bubig join us back in studio. Jenny, how are things?
Hey Shane, how's it going?
Keeping well. You've been busy at the European Championships. Is that what we're calling it?
European Games.
European Games. Sorry, of course. The paddle.
I made the mistake too.
Representing your country again. This is massive.
Yeah, some honour. Absolutely amazing experience there last week in Krakow at the European Games, playing paddle. Just, oh my God, I'm looking back at it going, that was a dream. Getting to walk out wearing Ireland across your chest is such an honour every time you get the chance, and to do it with a different sport is pretty cool as well.
Doubles? You were playing doubles, or was it singles as well?
Yeah, so paddle is only played as doubles.
Okay,
so
yeah.
my partner was Susan McCran, so she was the one who roped me into paddle, and I thank her for that now.
The fitness levels, how does it compare to tennis? Obviously it's less ground to cover, but I assume you need the reflexes and still a pretty decent base level of fitness. Yeah,
I was surprised actually when I started playing paddle how physical it actually is. Like, compared to tennis is such a bigger court, and obviously you've got more ground to cover, but it's a lot of like stop, start, forward, back, like squash, kind of like, because it's a mixture of squash and tennis. So you're going back and forth a lot, and it's about getting into the net. So and then you're either trying to get to that or else they're lobbing you. So you're going back and forth the whole time, and there's no break. So in tennis, like, you can kind of take your time walking over to get a ball. There's no the cage. You're enclosed in a cage, so you don't really get much downtime. But it didn't take too long to get used to, because I have that baseline of fitness from tennis.
What's easier to learn, tennis or paddle?
Paddle, I think. Coming from a tennis background, is a little bit difficult to adjust to paddle, because obviously I'm coming in trying to whack the ball, and that doesn't actually stand to you in paddle, because if you hit the ball with power, it bounces back up off the wall and it gives the opponent a chance then to dictate again. But learning the paddle shots is probably a little bit more straightforward compared to tennis, whereas there's also no serve in paddle, so that alleviates a huge problem, because the serve in tennis is the most difficult shot to learn.
How did the ball come into play in paddle?
You serve underarm. Underarm, and you're always trying to get into the net and control the point from the net, and you think, oh, here comes, like, they lob you a lot, so you think, here comes a lob, we'll just smash this. And if I use my tennis smash, as I said, unless you hit it hard enough and it bounces, hits the back wall, it can come all the way back over to your side where they can't get a play on it. But if you don't hit it correctly, it'll bounce, and then they then have a high ball on their side, which they can then put away.
Very tactical.
And it's a lot of slice, so you use a lot of slice. There's no topspin at all, really. Well, there's a little bit, but it's not really played with topspin. So flat and slice is the way you want the ball.
Give us an impression of doing a slice hit there.
A little. There's a shot called like this bandeja. So it's like, where you come up to like shoulder height and you like slice, come around. They say it's like throwing like a, when you're skimming a stone. Skimming a stone across the ball. So there's no actual like wrist movement on it. It's just using your body.
That was the official social media imagery of you, actually. It was like the swish of the ball.
Yeah,
and the throw.
Like Mohammed bin Salman over there.
You're doing it like.
It's like handball. It's almost like you're shaping your arm like you're playing handball.
It feels like you're almost pushing more with your body.
You brought us in a tennis racket. Can you bring us in a paddle?
Oh yeah, I've only just got one there not that long ago.
I only have the one.
Yeah, the one, and they're not cheap. My gosh, yeah.
What are we talking?
They're more expensive than tennis rackets. The racket I have, I think, is about 350 quid, and it looks like basically a beach bat.
Yeah.
Okay, forgive me for saying that, but it does, like, it's really thick, but it's like, it looks kind of like shaped like a.
I think this is the game that Adrian Barry wanted.
It was, wasn't it?
Wanted us to play, and I think he's reached out to a few places to see if they'll give us a game.
Yeah, so I was actually chatting with the president of the Paddle Federation, Naomi. She's been really great in my development with paddle. She was offering us to go up and have a game in Bushy Park, so we must take her up on that.
So, like, where can you play this in Ireland apart from Bushy Park?
So at the moment there's only 25 courts around Ireland. So Bushy Park is the main kind of place. Fitzwilliam Tennis Club, they have 3 paddle courts. Rockbrook School in North Farnham, there's one in Bective. They're kind of spread around. It's mainly in Leinster, but by the end of this year they're going to have 50. So it's kind of, obviously it's growing quickly, just not quickly enough for
I'd never heard of it. Never heard of it. Yeah,
you're not
first time hearing it.
Yeah, the only one. Yeah. A few of the like even the Irish athletes last week when we were travelling to Krakow, they were like, what's paddle? Is that in the water? So we were like, having to explain.
You were with the boxers.
We went to diving. It was meant to be boxing, but we actually travelled with the divers.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and some of the canoeists and kayakers. So even they were asking us. I was like, lads, you're in the water, you should know.
Yeah.
Like, if it's with a paddle.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were having to whip out the rackets and show them what it was and how it's played. So the European Games is just a really great opportunity for us to showcase paddle, in Europe, as well as hopefully, it's trickled down here into Ireland, so more people are going to get involved. But it's the fastest growing sport in the world at the moment.
Wow.
Feel onto Wimbledon, that Sophia Kenin and Coco Gauff had no business being a first round match. that's the quality of that. That should be a second week game at least, fourth round. You're talking about a Grand Slam champion against a Grand Slam finalist. What a match.
It's tough, yeah, because I mean, you know, looking ahead to Wimbledon, you would have thought Goff could have been maybe an outside favourite, you know, because her game kind of would suit the grass, and she was in the top half with Swiatek, so the bottom half is quite stacked in the women's side, so she kind of had a bit of a chance, you might have thought. And then when she came up against Kenin, that was straight away, that was popcorn tennis, you knew, because Kenin is a former Grand Slam champion and a former Grand Slam finalist, so we know she has the ability. She's just had a few ropey years with injuries and whatnot.
How cruel is that? Like, you can say it better than anyone, that the cruelty of professional tennis is like, she was a 2020 French Open finalist, like you said, and she had to go through qualifying at the French Open this year and didn't get through qualifying.
Yeah,
there's no sentimentality at all in tennis.
No, but like, you know, you hear, look at the draw, like that was unfortunate for Goff that she came up against Kenin. But I actually think that the qualifying stood to Kenin, because she'd come in, she's played 3 matches, you know, she's gotten used to the surroundings, she's played on grass, she has coming in then with a bit of confidence, whereas Goff, you know, coming out on a main court, and it's you know, there's always going to be nerves and the expectation and pressures. Like, it takes you almost a first set to get used to that, whereas Kenin has had 3 matches under her belt and will come in with confidence, and she looked every bit confident yesterday coming up against Goff. She was feisty, she was ready for the fight, and it was a great game. It was a really, really close game. I think that was probably that was the best match in Wimbledon yesterday.
Yeah, what's the final score? I have it in front of me here: 6-4, 2-6, 6-4. Like, and Kenin's had the injury issues as well. She's had upheavals in her coaching team, so like dealing with all that sort of crack is just, and to be able to, I guess, put that to one side and focus on a major is so important. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's trials and tribulations, I guess, of being a professional athlete. You have to deal with the off track or off court issues. Yeah, she had her dad was her coach, and then they had a breakup, and then he came back, and then all that kind of stuff's kind of weigh heavily on her. But she's a fantastic tennis player. It's just, we say this about a lot of the women's side as well, but can they carry through the form you'd like to see after beating a big name of Goff yesterday, that she can carry on now and you know, push on and do well in the tournament? How
do you think the state of women's tennis is at the moment?
It's looking healthy, definitely healthier than it was there for the last few years. Since Ash Barty retired last year, she was kind of the top of the game, and we were thinking she was going to emerge as being the top for a while, and then she kind of had that shock retirement. I think we're talking about the top 3, Swiatek, Sabalenka and Rybakina, as being the next big
serious players, like all 3 of them.
Unbelievable, yeah. Can they, you know, do what the men did and push each other on for the next number of years, and can we see some amazing records be made in the women's side? Hopefully. But there are other names like Jabeur, Mukova, if we're talking about Kenin, Goff, there's loads of players who will be pushing those players on as well. I mean, it's hard to call, will we see Swiatek dominating for the next 10 years? You know, but it definitely looks healthier that we have some rivals at the top of the women's game.
Yeah, it's so much better than the men's game, because there's one and the rest still in the men's game, whereas the women's, like you've just named, like more than half a dozen players who could all win Wimbledon. The other side of it too is all of those players you mentioned could walk down the street and might not be recognised. Is that a bad thing necessarily?
Oh, it is a bad thing, isn't it?
For the game, yeah, I think, but maybe for them, no, because you know, you don't want that.
Have your life, like,
yeah, you can have that bit of privacy. But yeah, I mean, come on, we do know who Swiatek. If she walked into him, you'd recognise her.
I wouldn't recognise her.
Really?
No.
I think a lot of people wouldn't. I really do. And
maybe tennis fans would.
No, of course, but I'm talking about like a sports fan.
Yeah,
well, horse racing is like that as well. It's like, you know, if Ryan Moore walked in here today, who's like the biggest, I'm going to Roscommon to see Ryan Moore, people wouldn't know who he is. Like, tennis is peripheral as well.
Take something like same in Formula 1, Drive to Survive, increase the awareness of people around certain drivers, and like it's kind of the same for different sports like that sometimes you need, well, maybe it hasn't worked in tennis.
No,
I guess
point definitely hasn't worked for,
like that was part of the plan, to make some of these kind of middle tier players more recognisable, but I don't know if it's worked to the same degree.
I don't think it has. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit, like how they haven't, well, you know, we want to see the kind of the journeymen as well as the top players, and see, like, everyone wants to see what Djokovic is doing at home, and you know, everyone wants a little insight into what's making him the best tennis player in the world. Or Swiatek, we only kind of got a snippet of her, we didn't get anything with Djokovic and Nadal.
Swiatek obviously winning in straight sets yesterday, but she's never got beyond the 4th round of Wimbledon. Like, grass tends to be maybe not her strength. I even listened in interviews to her, she wants to become more of an all-court type player. Do you think she deserves to be among the favourites for Wimbledon. I guess her grass form hasn't led people to accept that she should be one of the favourites, but then it's Swiatek, so why not?
Yeah, I think she's certainly mastered clay court, as we know, 3-time French Open Grand Slam winner. Then she's also mastered the hard court. She's done very well there last year in the US Open. It's the grass season is so short, like it's only maybe 4 weeks, so they don't get a huge amount to play on the grass, so it's not really surprising that not that many players are brilliant on grass. Like we look at Djokovic, obviously, because he's been playing on grass for so many years in Wimbledon, but Swiatek is like, I think this last year was like her third season, or not even third season, playing on grass, although she did win Junior Wimbledon in 2018. So that's, you know,
her talent overrided her lack of experience, but you hear that so often, the lack of experience on grass courts. Like, I think Novak Djokovic's first match on grass was when he was 17. He just didn't grow up around
first match.
And it's hard because back in the 70s and 80s, 3 of the floor slams were on grass at the Australian Open and the US Open, and they changed the surface, and now it's a total other way around. And I think grass is the only surface that doesn't have a Masters 1000 event, so it is seen as completely specialised. So you see all these really talented players exit so early on in Wimbledon, so it makes it really unpredictable.
It definitely does because of that, because like Roland Garros finished 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, they only have 3 weeks to prepare on grass. There's I think there's 2 tournaments normally that they either play, generally only play one or two, to get the warm-up event, to get time on grass, and a lot of them don't expect to win those tournaments. It's more just getting their feet on the grass and getting used to it. The game is played so differently compared to clay court. Like on clay, you have much more time. The rallies are longer. The grass court, like, it's so quick. The surface is so quick. You have to adjust your footwork. You got to get used to the not being able to slide. Well, although some players can slide on grass, like it's a completely different game altogether. It's so fast. Like you're playing up closer to the baseline. The points are shorter. You have to hit more with more power. Whereas on clay, you get away with more spin. So that's where you look at Swiatek. She's so dominant on clay because her game suits clay. She has a really big wind up on her forehand, and she creates loads of topspin on that. Her backhand's very, very good on as well on the clay court, because she can hit through that a bit more. So she wants to improve her grass court tennis, even though it's only for 4 weeks of the year. She's got to try and adjust her game. Like she needs to flatten out her shots more. She needs to shorten up that take back on her forehand, and she has the footwork. Like she's an amazing athlete on the court and moves really, really well, so that is one of her strengths. But I think she just needs to sharpen up those aspects of her game and maybe introduce a bit more slice and whatnot.
Grass is the trickiest surface, generally speaking,
to adjust to, I think, especially after coming from the clay. And as we mentioned, they don't get that much time on it, but it's a little bit of a different game. It's just so quick compared to the hard court and clay, where they have a little bit more time on the ball.
Novak Djokovic's competition.
There is none, right?
Well, I think Carlos Alcaraz won Queens and has all experience on grass.
Yeah, that was his third tournament.
But then he played Djokovic on his favourite surface, on clay, in the French Open semi-final, and in his own words, it got to him. Playing Djokovic got to him.
That was a surprise.
Yeah.
I really think that was a surprise.
He was favourite going into that match, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, and just the occasion, the nerves, the stress got to him. You find that hard to believe that happens to athletes at that level. When he is a Grand Slam winner, he has been to that stage of a tournament. He's experienced that, albeit he is only 20 and he hasn't got that much experience. But still, it was obviously the hype and the pressure created by himself and his team and the media that got him in that situation. But looking at Wimbledon for the men's side, Djokovic is the runaway favourite. Like, I don't really think there's anyone who's going to come close to him.
He seemed to get a nice reception yesterday, like reasonably nice reception.
I think it's a good point. I think he's finally getting to the place where he has a real aura about him.
His greatness is just...
And it's undeniable. And
yeah.
also statistically, he's going to be the greatest. I mean, if he wins this Wimbledon, he'll be level with the number of Wimbledons that Roger Federer won.
Mad, isn't it?
And if he wins this competition, he'll also have the most number of Grand Slams ever won, joint with Margaret Court.
Yeah.
He's favourite to win the US Open. He could finish the year with the calendar slam, winning all 4 slams in 1 year, and that will make him the greatest player ever.
Is he likeable though?
But is he? And the thing with Djokovic is, out of the big 3 between Rafael Nadal, Federer, and himself, he so wants to be loved. More than the other 2 ever did, but the problem is he's by far the least loved.
Then, I mean, like he's controversial.
I know, but the jab is just one thing as well. I mean, he also set up a players' union with Pospisil, the Canadian player, which is very admirable, but it excluded women, which is another thing that he does like. But he doesn't think of the bigger PR picture for a guy who is obsessed with his image. He's very reactionary and instinctive, and there's probably it's probably hard to warm to him at times. I actually do enjoy watching his matches, because he's such a tough player to play against. It's like, I think it was Casper Ruud, because he's lost 2 Grand Slam finals to him. It's won actually, sorry, the French Open recently. He said the problem with Djokovic is he has no weakness.
Yeah, he's in every single point.
The last 2 Wimbledon finals, he's lost the first set against Nick Kyrgios last year, Matteo Berrettini the year before. It doesn't matter to him. Imagine playing an opponent like that.
He is unbelievable. Like, as much as people like to hate him, you know, he is just undeniably the best tennis player at the moment, and he's really showing, like, he's crushing all of these records you're talking about there. Like, he overcame, you know, in French Open, he's now the most, he's got the most Grand Slams on the men's side. If he wins Wimbledon, 24 Grand Slams, matches Margaret Court, matches Roger Federer's 8th Wimbledon title. It's just like he hasn't lost on centre court in 40 matches in Wimbledon. He hasn't lost.
Andy Murray defeat, was that the last time he lost on centre court? And
Andy Murray is the only player in the draw, 128 players, he's the only player in the draw who's actually beaten Djokovic on grass as well.
That's mad.
Yeah, and that was in the final 10 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah. That's 10 years ago this year. God, yeah.
I mean, he's so good. He's just so good on the surface.
Wasn't it mad? Was it 4 years? 2019 final, Federer had 2 championship points against Djokovic.
Oh, sickening.
And at that point he was ahead of he was ahead of the other
Federer
2
to win.
Yeah, I love Federer. He was my favourite. Nothing against Djokovic, but I love Federer.
How do you compete with the Federer image?
You
can't touch him.
No, true.
I saw a photo of Roger Federer with Elton John yesterday. He pops up and then, like, he's singing a Coldplay concert. Like, this guy is he's unbelievable. I've spent this morning googling how much did the Wimbledon centre court roof cost. You get different figures, like $150 million was mentioned, £75 million was mentioned. But I mean, that was a farce yesterday during the match. The roof is closed for anyone who hasn't seen what happened. Djokovic beats Argentina's Pedro Castellan 6-3, 6-3, 7-6 on centre court. But after that first set, there was no play for 80 minutes. Despite the roof being closed, Djokovic was dabbing the grass. The leaf blowers came out. He was encouraging the crowd to start blowing in from the crowd to dry it. And it was just like, for a roof that's cost so much, I think it was the humidity maybe that's caused this issue. But
this is again climate change, isn't it? It's like when it hit 40 degrees in the UK last year, the railways couldn't function because we're not built for this. So I presume, and I'm not going on another tirade here, but I presume they're just not used to this humidity. The weather was nuts in Dublin yesterday, and I was thinking, how is this going to affect Wimbledon? Because, like, it was a blue sky about like 10 yards away, and I was getting absolutely drenched, and it was very, very humid over the last 2 weeks. So I presume they didn't actually build it with a view to the changing climate, I presume.
Well, if you spent that money on a roof, surely you can deal with humidity as well as precipitation. I don't know what.
But you don't build a roof for humidity. You build a roof to keep the rain away.
Yeah,
but you should consider the humidity. You know,
well, Colin, you're the tennis expert.
I've never seen that happen before at Wimbledon. It's unprecedented. I don't know how it did. I just 15,000 people in the crowd. Tim Henman, who's involved in the tournament, was asked about it on BBC, and he said, I'll get an answer for you. I don't know what happened.
You saw in Qatar how they had to keep the air conditioning going in winter or whatever, so they're obviously equipped for it. But Wimbledon was not built to deal with humidity in a stadium with a roof, I presume. I'm presuming here, because the climate is changing so rapidly, we just don't know what to do about it, basically.
Did they not wait till the first set was over to put the roof over, and there was a little bit of rain, so then the surface was wet then, and then they closed over the roof, and then that obviously created the core. They were saying, like, the grass was sweaty, so like they couldn't. That's the same effect of playing it on wet, on a rainy.
Should mention Michael Moe as well, the Monaghan man. He's not a Monaghan man, he's American / I think he's a few other nationalities as well. He of course famously got to the third round of the Australian Open, beat Zverev en route in the second round, but he yesterday beat the 11th seed Felix Auger-Aliassime in 4 sets. So just to mention to him, his mother Geraldine was from Monaghan.
Okay.
So there is
Didn't actually know that.
There's the Irish link there. Who at this stage, before we let you go, Jenny, are you predicting for the men's and women's side of the draw?
Undeniably Djokovic on the men's side. Hopefully it'll be a Djokovic-Alcaraz good final though that we see. And then on the women's side, that's a really hard one to call. If you put a gun to my head, I'd say Swiatek, just because I want her to show that she's able on the grass. But it could be anyone. There could be Rybakina, Sabalenka. I think my outside favourite will be Kvitova. I'd love to see her win, just because she's won it twice before, and she's a great grass court player. Won a tournament last week, and it'd be nice to see her, but I just can't see it being one of outside the top 3. So Swiatek.
Jenny, thanks for coming in as always.
Thanks for
pleasure. Thanks for being here.